It's like the third or fourth time I've seen that today, and I'm just dying. How many of you guys have had conversations like that? Like just crazy, awkward stuff like that. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm Jacob. I'm excited to be here with you guys kicking off this series, Big Butts. And I am the college and young adult director here at Thrive Church. And like one of the craziest things about working with college students and stuff like that, January, like we get done with the holidays and it's like go, go, go mode. We come back from school, from the break, and we go to a SALT conference. Chi Alpha, we send students to the Chi Alpha SALT conference. Was in Chicago this last year. And so just a couple weeks ago, we came back from that, and I'm super excited. I'm going to take a moment. It's kind of like a proud dad moment because it wasn't me, but we actually had 27 students from CMU go to the SALT conference, which... Cool. It wasn't me, because it's a problem. It was really our small group leaders, our core group leaders. And it was an incredible thing, because we haven't had the SALT conference for 2 years. So out of the 27 people, only like 6 had ever been to it before. So the others were just kind of going blindly, going like, okay, it's cool. But it was an awesome time. We had a great time worshiping together. We joined together with about 900 other college students from the 5 Great Lakes states. Just had an amazing weekend. But as a Chi Alpha staff member, we all have to serve and work the SALT conference. And a few years ago, they came to me, and I was still newer at CMU, and they're like, okay, Jacob, like everybody has to serve. How would you feel about taking over the audio-visual stuff for all the breakout sessions? And I was like, you really don't want that. And they're like, but we need somebody. And I'm like, I don't know AV. I just like, you give me a plug and like a hole, and I just start jamming things until it turns on and works. And like, you don't want me. That's not my thing. But I said, one thing about me is I actually went to school for advertising and marketing management. And I was like, you know that little table, that pitiful thing you call the SALT store? I said, that's my jam. Like, I love that. I said, how about can I work with them? And then they're like, just take it over. They were just like, take it over. So this is my third SALT, taking over the SALT store. And, I had this brilliant idea this year. And brilliant ideas, when Jacob says that, is dangerous. Because I had this idea to cut down on, like, overhead. And past years, we bought a bunch of apparel. And it'd take us 2 years to sell through it. And so rather than filling up my storage unit with apparel that we sell once a year, I thought, hey, how about we custom print stuff this year? And we found this amazing company that will do screen prints on a heat transfer sheet, and I'll just buy sweatshirts and sweatpants, and we'll just make them as they order them. Can you see any faults in this yet? So we go down there, we set up, and starting Black Friday, like Christmas, I just start buying sweatshirts and sweatpants and all this, getting all those good prices. And Kohl's people hate me. I will tell you that now, because I'm in there like every other day going, hey, I need some more sweatshirts and stuff like that. But my house turned into like, pretty much it looked like a retail store that had like gurgitated all over, like exploded. I had sweatshirts everywhere, and our house is not that big. Sweatshirts, sweatpants. And so for the SALT conference, I loaded all this stuff up, and I borrowed the Do Good trailer, loaded that up, didn't have enough room, so I started loading up the back of my SUV, ran out of room, and I actually had to leave like 3 or 4 boxes behind because I couldn't fit them in. So we went down there, and to say it was a hit is an understatement. I was like, maybe we'll do 100, 150 tops, custom print jobs. We did 260 custom print apparel items. So Chi Alpha stuff is all over the Great Lakes now, which is fun and great, but we kind of nicknamed, I had this little conference room as like a workroom. We nicknamed it the sweat shop, the SALT sweat shop, because I pretty much never left that. I'd get up at 7, 8 in the morning and not get back to my hotel room until about 1 or 2 in the morning. And I pretty much just never left that, trying to keep the SALT store hours up running with my workers and then keeping up on. We actually had to cut off custom orders Sunday. So 260 items in like 2.5 days. It was incredible. It was fun. I'm still like dreaming about colorful sweatshirts and all that kind of crazy stuff. But I'm excited because I get to, like said, we're here. I get to kick off this series called Big Butts. And I'm super excited about it because this first week we're talking about, but I'm afraid. And so one of the questions I have for you, like, what are you afraid of? Okay, so how many of you are afraid of spiders? Seriously, not that many more. Like, okay, a couple people. How many of you guys are afraid of snakes? More hands, yeah, I'm seeing it. How many of you guys are afraid of, like, heights? Yeah, a few of you, yeah, get there. A couple of you guys said that, stuff like that. Well, I thought it would be out of the enjoyment of this video, out of the light of this video, we'd look at some of the crazy fears and phobias that are in our society today. So I'm going to name off a couple fears, and let's see if we can figure out what they are. The first one is chorophobia. Chorophobia. Can you guys guess what that is? Chorophobia is the fear of dancing. Now, this is mine. I am terrified of dancing because I am a white guy, and I can't get rhythm. I don't even clap most of the time because I throw people off. That's how bad I am. This is one of my fears. How about this one? Okay, let's see if I can get this. Chlorophobia. Can you guys get this one? Fear of clowns. How many of you guys are afraid of clowns? Wow. I'm like, I thought there'd be more than that. All right, here's one of my favorite. Pelodophobia. How about that one? The fear of bald people. Sorry, Dave. How about this one? Ergophobia. The fear of working. Now, some of you may have these people living in your basement still. You know, fear of working. They're out there. How about this one? Oh, I missed this one the first time. Amophobia. Can you say that one? The fear of belly buttons. Now, I picked this one out because I used to love it. My son, I used to just look at him and to get him to giggle as a toddler, I just say belly button and he just giggled hysterically. But apparently there is a fear of belly buttons out there. And then the last one here, pogonophobia, the fear of beards. So if you're here and you have that, I am your worst nightmare. So, and if you come to Thrive Church, you've got a fear of bald people or beards, you're in trouble. But seriously, there's 536 well-documented medicated phobias in the world today. And the reality is our society, especially these last couple of years, our society has really given us a lot to fear and become afraid of. There are fears that sometimes keep us from living a better story and a better life. And if we are not careful, these fears become another excuse that keep us from living the purpose-driven life that God has wired us to live and given us a purpose to live. It keeps us from unleashing the best version of ourselves that really waits inside. And that's our heart here at Thrive and with this series, is we want to unleash the best side of you. But we often get into these words, but I'm afraid. But God, I'm afraid. None of us are exempt from fear. It's something we all deal with. And as a part of this series, we're looking at 2 Timothy chapter 1, one of my favorite scriptures as we were growing up. So 2 Timothy 1, if you've got your Bible with you, pop it open, or a Bible app, go ahead and pop it open. Helps to turn my Bible to the right side. 1 Timothy 1, 6 through 7, we're looking at the NLT version. It says up here, "This is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity," big butts, "but of power, love, and self-discipline." Big butts. No more big butts, more big guts. And that's kind of been the tagline of this series. The world has given us so much fear and worry. Our society has crippled us, especially these past couple of years with COVID and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to take a moment and define a couple things for you, because it's important to understand there's concerns out there, and concerns are an okay thing. They're a good thing, because you know what? My car's making a crazy weird sound. I'm concerned, so I'm going to go take it to the shop, right? My mouth is hurting me. I'm concerned, so I go see the dentist. Like, I'm concerned about my finances, so I make a budget. Those concerns are okay. But concerns left unchecked progresses into worry. Worry eventually develops into fear. Fear cripples and keeps us from the things that God has planned for us. And it's kind of interesting, as I was reading and researching about speaking today, the word worry has a very interesting origin. It comes from an Old English word, and the original origins of it literally means to choke out or to strangle the life out of, which when you start thinking about that has a very much more dark meaning to it. The definition can mean this. It means to harass by tearing, biting, or snapping, to shake or pull apart, quite often when involving the teeth, to shake or pull apart with the teeth, to touch it or disturb something repeatedly. It's kind of one of those moments if you were a child in your car and they'd just be like poking your brother and sister. like all the time, just annoying them. But to an extreme, to touch or disturb something repeatedly, to change the position of or to adjust by repeated pushing or hauling, to assail with a rough or aggressive treatment. Our word torment comes from this side of it. Persistent or nagging attention or effort, to afflict with a mental distress or agitation. Also moves on to talk about to move, proceed, or progress in an unceasing and difficult effort. And it's so interesting to me that we've taken this old English word that had such dark tearing and gnashing and so many, and as an American culture, we've equated it to equivalent to I'm concerned. Oh yeah, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. But the origins of it are so drastic. Isn't that exactly what worry does, though? It kind of chokes and can strangle the life out of us if we leave it unchecked. It kind of reminds me of this, sitting in your car. Maybe you did this as a teenager or something like that, or maybe you just got a cool car and you like to do this. You sit in your car, you put it in neutral, and you just rev that engine, getting that really good rev engine going. But it reminds me of that illustration, like, what if we sat in our car and we rev that engine? What happens? It's loud, it's noisy, we're wasting a whole lot of gas, and with gas prices, that's a concern. We're wasting a whole lot of gas, and what happens? We don't get anywhere. And that idea of sitting in a car quite often and revving that engine in neutral reminds me of sometimes when we let worry take control of our lives. It's noisy, it's loud, it wastes our energy, and what happens? We don't get anywhere. We don't accomplish anything. So as we're speaking of big butts, I want to look at somebody in the Old Testament who had big butts, and that's the story of Moses in Exodus chapter 3. And we've heard this story quite often of Moses in the burning bush, but it's interesting as I was researching and looking this up, when I looked at this scripture and kind of looking at some different things, there was 5 big butts that Moses gives us. And just to recap, Exodus chapter 3, we're going to look at 3 and 4, and I'm going to kind of jump around here, but I'll have some of it up on the screen for you, a couple points here. But basically, Moses is out in the wilderness tending to his sheep with his father-in-law, Jethro, and he takes the sheep way out into the wilderness, and he sees this burning bush. Now, I don't know about you, out in the desert with just the sheep, I would be like thinking I'm hallucinating and poking the sheep next to me and being like, do you see that fire too? Because we're in the story of where the burning bush is, Moses sees the burning bush. So here in verse 3, or starting in verse 2, it says, There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't this bush burning up? I must go see it, because I'm hallucinating, so I want to go get closer. That's what I want to do. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called out to him from the middle of the bush, Moses, Moses, here I am, Moses replied. He says, do not come any closer, the Lord warned him. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Jacob, the God of Isaac, and the God of Abraham. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress. And he goes on for a verse or two, and he's picking back up in verse 10. He says, now go, God tells Moses, now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. But Moses protested to God. Start of verse 11. And this is the start of 5 buts that Moses gives God. And I want to look at those real quick with you today as we kind of look at that. And so in verse 11, it says, but Moses protested to God, for who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? So the very first one, Moses says, but who am I? What authority do I have? What ability do I have? But who am I? And I love the way, I kind of like try and picture some of these moments and look at this as like, hey, how would God, can you imagine what God? But every time Moses had a but, God had a response for him. And the very first one, he says, God simply replied, I'll be with you. What do you got to worry about? Like, I'll be with you. But that wasn't good enough for Moses. And so in verse 13, we see, but Moses says, but I don't know what to say. Verse 13, but Moses protested, if I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you. They will ask, what is his name? Then what should I say? And God responds simply by saying, just tell them I'm Yahweh. Tell them I am who I am. Tell them I'm their God, the God of their forefathers. And then again, Moses' third but. But I don't have the authority. In chapter 4, verse 1, at the starting that. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? Because that's got to be a fear. Like, okay, God told me to go to the president, and tell him that he's doing something wrong and he needs to, stop this. He's going to the Pharaoh and saying, hey, I've got to go to the children of Israel and say, God spoke to me. I'm going to the Pharaoh saying, release my people out of slavery. He says, but I don't have any authority. And God's simple response is like, you want proof? Okay, here. What's that thing in your hand? He goes, shepherd's staff? He goes, okay, lay it down. And he laid it down. It turned into a snake. He said, pick it up, and it turned back into a staff. He gave him 3 miracles as signs to say, hey, God has sent me. Was Moses happy with that? Of course not. Moses' fourth but. He says, I'm not a good speaker. Chapter 4, verse 10. But Moses pleaded with the Lord, O Lord, I'm not very good with my words. I never have been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Now, I love to sit there and think about, how's God doing this? Okay, Moses, I'm going to, I understand. I'm going to give you a pep talk. You can do this. I'm with you. Just say this. Here's a sign. And now we're getting to the fourth one, you're not so good. I love God's response. He basically says, who do you think gave you the ability to speak? Who do you think gave you a mouth? Don't you think I can take words away, take speech away? I kind of have that how many got the Matrix moment where Neo goes to talk and his mouth starts disappearing and all that kind of stuff? Wouldn't that have been really cool if God did that to Moses? Don't you think I get it? And his mouth just starts disappearing. Okay, that's got to be enough. But no, it wasn't enough for Moses. And you can almost sense the agitation in God's response of hey, didn't I create? Don't I give people the ability to speak? Moses' fifth but. Verse 13, 4 of 13, he says, but Moses again pleaded, Lord, please send anyone else. How many times are we in that same situation where it's okay, God, I hear what you're saying, but please send anybody else. Let me wait and see. And I love the way we think God's getting agitated. We know by his response in this one. In verse 14, 4:14, it says this. Then the Lord became angry with Moses and said, all right, what about your brother Aaron? Aaron's a good speaker. I'm going to send him with you. As a matter of fact, he's on his way to see you right now. Just go and greet him and tell him he's going with you to speak to the Pharaoh, and he can speak on your behalf. God again gives Moses the fifth time a response of okay, you're testing my patience here. Just go do what I've asked you. But Moses tried to let these fears cripple him from what God had called him to do. How many of us are in those same situations? Sure, anyone else but me, God. I know the kids ministry needs volunteers, but anyone else but me. I know one youth needs volunteers. God, anyone else but me. I know my neighbor needs to hear about Jesus, but somebody else will come and tell them about Jesus. All those moments, those things that are fearing, hey, God, I know that you're telling me to step out in my career, step out in this, but let me just wait and see what else happens. Moses had all these excuses, and quite often, I just kind of, the thought came into my head, if not you, then who? And there's got to be that moment even with Moses. There has to be someone else that can do this, but no, God's called us. This whole series is kind of based on this idea that we could build our life and our faith journey on one of two foundations. And the first foundation is this. We can live a life of fear. We can live a life of uncertainty. We can let the fear cripple us and let us freeze in our tracks, live a life of uncertainty. And that's really what this series is about, big butts. Big butts. Or the second one is we can live a life of faith, of certainty, and grow bigger guts and take steps of action. Now, I was telling you about that story about the salt store, and I was telling you that for a reason because a few weeks ago, as I was prepping, my house was exploded with merchandise everywhere. I woke up late in the middle of the night because I'm getting old and had to use the bathroom, and I kind of came staggering out of my bedroom in the hallway, and something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye, and I froze, terror. There was this massive shadow on the wall. And I'm going like, oh, what in the world is this? Now, if you don't know where I live right by campus, surrounded by student housing. And so I just get used to students outside my bedroom window talking, and that's how I fall asleep. That's fine, no big deal. But I'm like, they finally got in. Like, and I'm sitting there like going, because and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like in the hallway, bathroom, and I'm going, front door's over there. There's a metal bat in the closet right next to the front door. The reason there's a metal bat by the front door is because we've had students who were in trouble, 2 a.m, come pounding on our door, but just in case. Okay, you're good. But I'm like sitting there going like, okay, how can I make it to the bat and over to that shadow before time? So I like Jacob Ninja, like crawled out, did a belly roll, because I am agile, people. I am agile. And I like did my best crawl and like army crawl and rolled over, grabbed the bat, snuck around and like was ready to like leap out, blood curdling scream and like run after this shadow. And just as I start coming up, I went, it's one of the stupid mannequins from the store. I was like, seriously? I no longer had to go to the bathroom, I will tell you that. Like, it was so stinking terrifying. But this is the truth. We freak out because, hear this. We freak out because worry can even give a very small thing a really giant shadow. Worry can give the smallest things a big shadow. And if we allow small worries to cast big fears, we will freeze. It will cripple us. We will be crippled by our fear. We won't accomplish the good things that God has asked us to do. Let's look at our scripture one more time. 2 Timothy chapters 1, verse 6 and 7. I kind of added a couple things in here. It says, this is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you. Grow your faith. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, big butts, he didn't give us big butts, but of power, love, and self-discipline. He's given us the ability to have big guts and to step out in faith and action. Now, simply this, as I close, the band's coming up, the whole premise of this series and kicking this off today is bigger guts, smaller butts. That's it. Bigger guts, smaller butts. And my challenge to you, just take action. Whatever God is calling you to, just take action. What's the one thing that you know God has been telling you to do, but you have let your fear, you've let your butt prevent you from doing this? Grow a gut and take action. Maybe it's something as small as serving in Thrive Kids. Maybe it's something as like serving in One Youth. You know, I know teenagers can be scary. They're only smelly some of the times. Other than that, they're fun to hang out with. I mean, like, you should have seen us last week. We had an awesome Nerf war. I mean, it was a blast. Maybe it's stepping out. Maybe it's stepping out and living a radically generous lifestyle. Maybe it's confronting conflict. Maybe it's seeking forgiveness and healing for a past hurt, but you're too concerned. But what if they don't respond well? But I'm not sure how they'll respond. Take a step, or maybe it's you're concerned because it's taking a step in a path that's filled with questions. Maybe God's calling you to step out of a career or step into something that's different. And you're just going, but God, I have security here. And there's a lot of questions there. Take a step in the right way. The one thing I want to tell you is bigger guts, smaller butts. Take that step of action, but understand this. You don't have to do it alone. There's somebody here within our Thrive family that'll walk with you, that'll pray with you. We have a prayer table. Pray for it, then do it. But somebody will take take your hand and walk alongside you as you face the fears that are in your life and grow bigger guts. Let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, God, I thank you for this beautiful, beautiful February day. I thank you that we can come and we can just talk about the things that are in our life. But God, I pray that our concerns don't give way to worry, and our worry doesn't cripple us into fear and keep us from the things that you've called us to do, God. I know there's so many buts in our world, but what's going to happen next month? What's going to happen with COVID? Are we going to have to go virtual again? Are we going to have to do this again? But God, I pray that you would shrink those and help us grow bigger guts so that we can step out in faith and live this life that gives glory not only to our own lives, but gives glory to like Thrive Church, that helps out Thrive Church, but even gives glory to helping out Central Michigan. And people would know about you because of the actions that we took. We ask this in your name. Amen.